Welcome to this edition of the Mayor's Corner. I'm Jim Brown, Mayor of Cedar Falls. Today's program stems from conversations I've had with city leadership, including our great team from Channel 15, on how to traverse through the new University Avenue roundabouts. As you'll see in a moment, our team went out with an overhead drone in real time to a couple different vantage points showing traffic on a Sunday afternoon. I believe this type of video will be of value based on the many conversations I've had with constituents throughout the city. For most, it'll be a refresher of sorts. For some, it will hopefully give some insight. And for a few folks, it might answer some questions that have come up as they've driven down this new corridor. Regardless of the design chosen, what most folks appreciate is the pavement is brand new. They also realize the speeds are slower. And for many, they are glad that at most times they aren't stopping for traffic. And if they are, it's for seconds, not minutes as it would be for traffic lights. Finally, many business and owners and drivers alike appreciate the better access points in and out of the area. So now please take a look at what we've done, and I hope you find some value in driving down the University Avenue corridor. So Stephanie, what we're looking at here on the screen is our Channel 15 crew went up into a drone into the air, and we are heading north. So above in the screen is Pete Junior High. Behind us to the right is the new Slumberland and the Hy-Vee. So here we are coming in, and we're going to see some pretty good traffic flow through this particular roundabout. What you can see, I think the main concern, or at least the main mindset, would be yielding as we enter in these roundabout intersections. Would that be accurate?
Yes. Very, very good. That's the kind of the golden rule of a roundabout, is to yield. So as you're looking to enter the intersection, you're just being aware of what's going on and being cautious that it's safe to enter the intersection.
So as we just saw that group of cars beforehand, there was probably 5, 6 cars that came through. Obviously they're moving through, but these folks coming from the bottom need to yield as they enter into the roundabout intersection.
Yep, so we're seeing here absolutely that car yielding to the one that was already in the roundabout, maybe pausing more than they need to. I mean, if somebody's just arriving at the roundabout at one spot, you might still have the room to go ahead and enter the intersection.
Right, so here's a good example of a trail of cars, if you will, 4 in a row, and there's folks waiting down below, but they're only waiting a few seconds.
Right.
It's not a traffic light. They're not waiting for 2 or 3 minutes at the most inopportune time when kids need to be picked up or they're late for an appointment. We'll also see here that once you're inside the roundabout, there's still some caution to be had, correct?
Yes, and as you're looking to exit the roundabout, you should still put on your signal so those that are waiting know what you're planning to do. And when you're in that roundabout, you should stay in your lane and not cross over to other lanes. And I think most drivers here are doing a really good job of both being cautious when they enter and yielding if there's a car already in the roundabout. And then those exiting, for the most part, are staying in their lane appropriately. One of the features of the roundabout at Boulder and also at Holiday is there's a separated right turn lane, and that came through the traffic modeling where we thought that that was going to be a heavier movement, and so separating those where those drivers don't need to enter the roundabout and can just go straight into making their right turn movement, still yielding if a car is exiting the roundabout and coming their way, but helping to separate that a little bit so that that flow can be just continuous.
So what we're looking at here is going from the Unidome towards Waterloo, and one key thing that I recognize as I come up to that exit, or that exit point, is the road does meander a little bit to the left. So that is where it's maybe important to have that speed check, because if there is heavy traffic, you have to recognize some folks will need to peel off to the right, and some folks need to be in the far 2 left lanes to enter the roundabout.
I think that's a good point, that the speed limit in the intersection is an advisory of slowing down to 15 miles an hour when there's heavier traffic. But then in the cases where there might be no traffic, you're the only vehicle, you're going to feel safer going a little bit faster, and that's okay. So it's a judgment call of when it's safe to go what speed.
So from the top right, we have a truck, the white truck, doing a good job yielding. Obviously, it's okay to enter the roundabout. They are in that far inner lane, and they're going to do a complete, almost U-turn, which many folks do because of the different access points.
Right.
And so that's where you stay, and right there, unfortunately, is that lane turn from within the roundabout. It's more preferred where the truck might be now to make the lane change, as opposed to being in the roundabout and making the lane change.
You're picking up on a point about staying in your lane, and he was in that inner lane, and that inner lane has the right to exit the roundabout there, so he should have stayed in that center lane instead of crossover. I think some people think if they're going to exit, they should be in that right lane, and that's not necessarily true. What that inner lane user does need to be careful of, though, is if they're planning to exit, have their turn signal on, so if there is somebody in that outer lane, they know, or the person looking to enter the roundabout yields because they know it's not safe, because they would cross over if they were to enter. So that's an important thing, is just to be aware.
So Stephanie, now we've changed from going from Waterloo up towards the Unidome, and again we're coming up to the Boulder roundabout intersection.
But I guess what this points to is the spreading out or spacing of the traffic, and just having that steady flow helps everybody move through that quickly and keeps the traffic moving.
And again, if you could stress, the speed is important there. As we just saw, one car was in the center of the roundabout, and a car coming up where that black car is still went into the roundabout slowly, yep. But that was the merge, that there's two lanes and it flowed.
Yes.
And one, I believe, instance we'll see here coming up is where the right part of the roundabout, almost a third of that right part of the roundabout right now is just a blacktop. Mm-hmm. Eventually that will be enclosed or encased with a curb.
Yep. There will be a little bit of a curb and then some brick pavers, so that there is the room there if semis are using it, if they need that, but then there'll be landscaping in the middle. So right, driving across like that won't be occurring when we finish construction.
And Stephanie, one phrase that has caught on that I've conveyed and that I've heard is, when you approach the roundabout, yield to the left, but then be cautious to the right. Is that a fair assessment of at least a mindset entering in, as we'll see these cars here do, into the roundabout intersections?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so, because they are looking a little bit to their left before they enter the roundabout, but as they're looking to exit, just check to see if there's anybody in a lane next to you, which would be to your right. So absolutely. And again, I think it's important that people use their signals so that the drivers in the intersection know what's going on, because that's a key safety factor as well.
So Stephanie, looking from this vantage point from the drone, this looks busy, especially if you're not used to it, because there is the turn lane coming from the left that enters in from the right, or to the right, and there's lots of lanes, but there's also lots of markers. It's going to be crucial, I think, for folks to understand that cars are also supposed to yield to pedestrians. The pedestrian sign we see down below, and of course the white crosswalk, yes, in terms of traffic and foot traffic and vehicle traffic. Right. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah, so in advance of the roundabouts, there will be clear markings of where the pedestrians should be crossing with the sign in advance, so that drivers are aware of that. And pedestrians may be in that crosswalk, especially if they feel that it's safe, that no vehicles are coming, and at that point a vehicle would need to yield to them if they're in the crosswalk. One of the features of the roundabout is that then that crosswalk is not integrated into the intersection. It's a little bit further off the intersection, so that's intended to enhance safety there. And another safety aspect is by having the middle island there, they don't need to worry about crossing multiple lanes of traffic. It's 1 to 2 at a time, and then they have a little bit of a haven there before they cross the next lane or two.
And you can see even here there's a lot of traffic. Of course, I think most folks recognize that they need to yield pedestrians. We don't want to hit any pedestrians, but that's just one additional obvious advantage of a lower speed as folks are entering in these roundabout intersections.
Yes, yep.
One thing I've heard happens a few times throughout the day, Stephanie, are folks stopping actually in the middle of the roundabout. As we see this traffic pattern here, obviously if you're in the roundabout, depending upon what lane, or in both, in each lane as cars are moving through, it's important that you don't stop in the middle of the roundabout, correct?
You keep moving, right, because you have the right-of-way being in the intersection. The folks that are looking to come into the intersection are the ones that need to yield. So keep moving, because if you stop, the person behind you might not be anticipating that. They might rear end you. So we want to keep that flow moving through the intersection.